Hi, everyone. This is Miss Macedonia. I just wanted to provide you some pointers in terms of completing our case study for this chapter for social emotional characteristics, specifically for Sammy. As you have noticed, this is the lengthiest case study that we've had, and this is the first time that we're being introduced to multiple data points. So we have a letter from Sammy's self-contained teacher, Miss Cole, as well as a psychoeducational test report to be able to use in this discussion. And thinking about our own case studies, again, you are going to be provided with multiple data sources as well to synthesize and use in these case studies. So the first thing that I did in terms of getting this organized is that in the end of the chapter, there were 5 main bullet points. And within those 5 bullet points, there were multiple questions. So the first thing that I did was I wanted to break down those bullets into separate questions to make sure that you don't miss any of the questions that are being asked. So within those 5 bullets, there are 7 questions. And I also wanted you to be able to see that even within a question, there are multiple parts. So for example, for number 1, you are looking at the historical and current evaluation information. You're making a list of strengths and needs indicated by the case material. So I provided another table within the graphic organizer with strengths and needs that you would be able to utilize to organize your thoughts. Again, with this type of assignment, it's better to be able to do multiple strengths and needs. So again, it's asking for strengths and needs. The key is that it's plural, it's not singular. So if you only put one strength and one need, I'm going to take points off. Okay, so more than one. So 2 or more would be appropriate in answering this question. For number 2, the structure is similar because this question is asking you to use the information from the case study and apply it specifically to 2 specific theories. So Bronfenbrenner's theory and Bandura's model. So again, you are applying the case study information specifically to both of these models. Okay, so as we kind of go through to number 6, what implications do you see in this case about the interactions between learning disabilities and behavior disorders? So within this example, and again, this is not the perfect answer, I left out some things on purpose so that we could talk about it. So within this answer, I provided a little bit of context in terms of Sammy's background when he was found eligible for special education, when his behaviors began to escalate. And I talked about when he is supported in a supportive environment that provides him structure, he had minimum behavior difficulties. So again, I could have put in more support. I could have put in more information. So his self-contained classroom, right? That provided him structure, he had minimal behavioral difficulties. So he did have a behavior contract, but other than that, he wasn't having these extreme physical aggression outbursts. So one of the things that you notice is I have a lot of information here in teal. So teal is evidence from the case study. I didn't include any information from the text. So I wrote a comment here that I would add information from the text to strengthen my argument here. So what from the text could we pull in to make an argument about learning disabilities, behavior, and how they interact with each other? So that's something that I want you to think about. So your answer should be able to provide a little bit of background in terms of, academics and his behavior, but also be able to talk about those interactions. I really wanted to hit on question 7 because it talks about the use of response to intervention. So response to intervention was was noted in chapter 2. So I have the page number right there for you to look at. So how might the use of response intervention have changed the course of Sammy's educational planning and services? So in terms of Sammy's program, we saw a lot in terms of how he was serviced academically. So he was serviced in the general education classroom. He wasn't making much progress, so that he was provided his services in a self-contained classroom. However, there really wasn't much in terms of any kind of behavior interventions, because really within that environment, his behavior was pretty good, right? His teacher, he said that there was a behavior contract, and this seemed to have a positive effect. However, once he moved into the general education classroom, that's where kind of things fell apart for Sammy. And some of this were external factors that he didn't have control over, such as the resource position wasn't filled, for example, and these types of supports were not provided with fidelity. So in terms of the response to intervention, RTA could have been utilized to address his behavior within these 3 tiers. So on that page 45, you'll see the different kind of tiers. I did want to show you this document too. I will link this just so that you can access it. But basically, when we're looking at tiers of response to intervention, this is specifically for behavior and social emotional support. So when we think about tier 1, these are things that we can put into place to help all students. So this is typically across the entire classroom. So this might be, for example, this 4th bullet point is talking about firm, fair, kind, consistent teaching, positive relationships with all students. So these are things that teachers are providing to all students. So once we go up to a tier 2, these students are called at-risk students. So there's intensified classroom and small group interventions. So when we're thinking about this, we might be doing like a structured adult mentoring program where we assign a student to a trusted adult, and they do like a check-in in the morning and a check-out in the afternoon to see how their day was. You see that behavior contracts are within tier 2. You see small group social skills training. So these are things that we could think about in terms of Sammy, and we already know that Sammy did have a behavior contract. Now we're thinking about tier 3. These are what's called the high-risk students. So these are individualized interventions. And this is the top tier intervention that we can provide students. So only about 3 to 5% of students are going to require tier 3 intervention. So if we provide with data that these tier 1 interventions aren't working, the student moves up to tier 2. With data, we say that those interventions aren't working, then the student goes to tier 3. This is when we're thinking about a more intensive intervention, like a functional behavior assessment and potentially a behavior intervention plan. So this is something that we might really want to think about for Sammy. We learned about an FBA BIP in this chapter, so I would definitely want to see more information about functional behavior assessment and BIP within this answer. So when we're thinking about this problem behavior of fighting, we could actually take some data around, what happens right before the problem behavior of fighting? What's the consequence of fighting? So we could develop a functional behavior assessment, and the team could then put in place a behavior intervention plan to address these needs. And just so you guys understand too, within a tier 3 intervention, like a BIP, there's always other tiers that are included. So for example, what's going to be happening at tier 1 when he's in the classroom to support this plan? what kinds of things in tier 2 could he receive. So I provided some ideas, check in and out with a trusted adult, a social skills group on impulse control to really consider, his emotional well-being. So those are some things that I just want you to think about. Okay. So if you have any questions specifically about this case study, let me know. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday.